Greetings from Kardec Radio, where we are bringing listeners another audiobook, this one entitled Who is Afraid of Death, written by Richard Simonetti. This 9th installment covers Chapter 16 entitled A Disgusting Solution and Chapter 17 entitled Old Trauma, Enjoy. Chapter 16, A Disgusting Solution. The word euthanasia, which means happy death, was created by the philosopher Francis Bacon. His arguments were that the doctor's responsibility is to alleviate illnesses and pain not only by curing them, but also by granting a peaceful and easy death to the patient when the problem is irreversible. Although universally considered as homicide, justice allows euthanasia when applied to dying patients who are suffering terrible pain and afflictions. Lawsuits filed against people involved in this kind of crime are very unusual. In some countries, euthanasia is considered an ordinary medical procedure, consented by the patient, himself or by his family members, with the purpose of shortening the suffering. Religions in general are against euthanasia, based on two main principles. First, it is up to God, Lord of our fortune, to promote our return to the spirit world. In the tablets with the 10 Commandments, given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai, where the fundamentals of human justice lie, there is the unquestionable recommendation: Thou shalt not kill. Second, nobody can assure with absolute certainty that a patient is hopelessly unrecoverable. The medical literature is full of examples of patients in desperate conditions who regain their health. Spiritism confirms such considerations and goes even further by demonstrating that euthanasia not only suspends the purging of the incarnated spirit provided by the illness, but also imposes serious difficulties on him for his return to the spiritual world. André Luis approaches this subject in the book Workers of the Life Eternal, written through Francisco Candido Xavier, by describing Cavalcante's disincarnating process. He was a charitable man who had this unjustified fear of death. Despite his merits and the support of spiritual guides who assisted him, he simply refused to die, desperately attaching himself to the physical world. Since the patient was unconscious and with no family members to consult with, the doctor arbitrarily decided to abbreviate his sufferings with a deadly dose of anesthetics. André Luis describes what follows. Almost immediately the agonizing man silenced. His body started to stiffen slowly. The facial mask became petrified. His moving eyes were soon glassy. To a casual observer, Cavalcante could be considered dead, but not to us. The personality of the disincarnating man was still linked to the corpse, fully unconscious and unable to have any reaction. Geronimo, the spiritual mentor, who accompanied André Luis, then explains, since the massive dose of anesthetic acts directly upon the entire nervous system, it also influences the centers of force in the perispirit. Cavalcante is now tied up to trillions of neutralized dormant cells, invaded by a strange sluggishness that makes him unable to react to our assistance. We probably will not be able to release him for the next 12 hours. In the end, the author emphasizes, and just as Geronimo had predicted, we were only able to release Cavalcante 20 hours later with a great deal of hard work. Even so, he was not freed in a favorable and animated condition. He was showing apathy, drowsiness, and lack of memory, and therefore we conducted him to Fabiano's nursing home, which is a helping institution in the spiritual world, to receive further treatment. Used since ancient times, euthanasia is far from being a happy death. It is actually a disgusting solution for the patient, besides being deplorably disrespectful to God's determinations. Chapter 17, Old Trauma. Recommendations. Bury me only when I start to stink. Do not bury me. I want to be cremated. Wait at least 24 hours before burying me, no matter the circumstances of my death. During lectures given about death, a frequent question that arises is, if I go through a lethargic trance and wake up in the grave, what will happen to me? The humorous answer, nothing special. You will die after a few minutes due to lack of oxygen. It is amazing how worried people are about the possibility of being buried alive, nurtured by old stories of corpses strangely found, turned in the coffin, when it is opened months or years after the burial. Perhaps these facts may have happened in the old centuries, particularly during epidemics or times of battles. There were lots of corpses to be buried, and some were not properly checked to see whether the person was really dead. Our ancestors might have taken lethargy for death, thus condemning the victims by their ignorance to die of suffocation. Today, it is practically impossible for this to happen, provided the family requires the presence of a doctor, which in Brazil is compulsory, since you cannot bury someone without a death certificate issued by a doctor. The doctor in turn cannot issue such certificate without examining the corpse. A doctor can easily verify whether the person is actually dead or in a lethargic trance. The vital functions do not cease during the lethargic trance, remaining latent and imperceptible to a superficial observation. He will check with a stethoscope that the blood flow is synced with the heartbeat. When the heart stops beating, death will take place in 4 minutes. The eye check is also conclusive. If mydriasis occurs, which is an extreme dilatation of the pupil of the eye, with no response to light stimulation, death is consummated. Seemingly, this type of fear originates from disconnecting problems, since it is very common for the spirit to remain bonded to the body for a few hours or days after the burial, because the spirit lacked preparation for death. Considering that all of us, for sure, have already gone through this unpleasant experience in past lives, we keep, hidden in our consciousness, traumas that manifest themselves as a fear of being buried alive. The understanding of the death mechanism, along with compliance to present life commitments, will help us to overcome this uncomfortable inheritance from disastrous past experiences